says ERP systems, they support all internal operations within an organization, whether it is finance, accounting, or sales, purchasing, HR, all of these are supported. They integrate functional and cross-functional business processes. So a process that is within a department, within just one department, is integrated, is streamlined. But also processes that span different departments are supported and integrated by SAP. SAP integrate across the modules. It is, as we said, fully integrated, meaning there is no separation, there is no, all the units can talk to each other. And we said that this is possible because of the application logic itself, but again, the central database plays a big role in there. It is a global system, so you have support for multiple languages and multiple currencies. Okay, as you can see, here are some of the modules. There are, of course, like plus 2,000 modules in the ERP system. It is, as we said, a very complex system, very large system. But here are examples of the processes that are supported. Production, and that's when for manufacturing companies. So it's support from the very first step of coming up with a plan, a production plan, all the way until you actually fulfill the production and store the products that you produce into the warehouse. We have material management, how to procure material from different suppliers. We have sales and distribution, selling to the customer. We have plant maintenance. We have project systems, quality management. Everything that we, of course, like all of these modules involve accounting. So we have financial accounting and managerial accounting. These two are very, like they talk to each other all the time. Any transaction that you enter in financial accounting has a direct impact on managerial accounting or control. Again, human resources is also integrated across simply because many of the processes that you conduct are conducted by employees, and you need to keep track of that, and that's done through HR. So that's why part of HR is integrated across. Business intelligence is very important because it summarizes all of the transactions and provides support for executives at the top so that they can support decision making. So business intelligence, you will see part of it is just simple reporting, like the online analytical processing. But other part that has been added lately by SAP is the predictive modeling and the predictive analytics. And that's trying to look at the historical data in order to determine what will happen in the future. So that's a new addition that has been added lately. Okay, we talked about also enterprise system integrating other systems, third party systems like supply chain management or supplier relationship management or product life cycle management, and that's in marketing. So there are new additions every now and then. A lot of times SAP actually acquire new companies and then they add new modules, like what they have done with Business Objects. Business Objects is a business intelligence company, and when SAP bought it, it starts offering their products as part of the SAP suite. We talked about the central database as a distinguishing feature of enterprise systems. Another distinguishing feature is the application platform. And that's like the infrastructure, the low-level technology that enables integration. So if it wasn't for SAP NetWeaver, then you wouldn't be able to get the different modules to talk to each other, or the ability to integrate non-SAP applications along with SAP. You are able to do that through the application platform, and that's SAP NetWeaver. You can think of NetWeaver as the operating system. Same thing like the Windows operating system. What does Windows help you do? Well, it integrates again across different applications. So if you have one application trying to send information to another, it is sent, the interface is done through Windows. So same thing with NetWeaver. For example, let me go back to Windows. If you are trying to copy and paste from Excel to Word, your ability to do that is facilitated by Windows. Now, if we come and think about SAP, and you want data to be integrated or to be passed along from one module to the other, or from one system to the other, even if the other system is a non-SAP application, that's made possible by NetWeaver. So NetWeaver enables that integration, and you need to think of it as the operating system. Okay, next we are going to talk about the different types of data that is within the ERP system. Some of the data are what we call organizational data. They tell us which client are we represent, which means which organization do we present. So Qatar University is a client. Within or underneath the client, you have different company codes. And you can think of the company codes as different, not departments, but rather as different colleges. So the different colleges, each college serves as a different company code. And then underneath the company code, we would have different plans. The plans now represent different departments. So we'll talk about, or you will see an architecture or a chart about that in just a little bit. So organizational data is just the levels and the elements that are within the system. This is data that we also call persistent. It remains in the database one cycle to the next. You need it. These are like the building blocks. The second type of data is the master data, and the master data is data that is persistent within the organization, which means that you need it from one business cycle to the next. An example would be information about your customers, information about your products, information about vendors. Normally, at the end of a business cycle and the beginning of one, you will continue to use the same data. When I say persistent, that doesn't mean that it does not change. Of course, like a customer, or you may create new customers, so you can add new records to the customer database or table. However, the idea behind that master data is that it continue to exist from one business cycle to the next. The third type of data, that's transactional data, and it's really the opposite of master data, because in transaction data, the data is purged out of the database at the end of a business cycle. So at the end of the year, you do not expect to continue searching and retrieving purchase orders, for example, or sales order that were created at the beginning of the year. So at the end of a business cycle, all of the transactional data, which is transient data and is only associated with the process steps itself, these data are purged into a historical data warehouse. Now, of course, we cannot completely delete the data. Why? Because it is illegal, of course, like you have to maintain records of all of your processes even after the end of a business cycle. The second thing is businesses are really interested in running business intelligence, which means that they analyze the historical data and try to predict what will happen in the future. And that's the whole idea behind predictive analytics. Okay, so this is just a revision of what I have said. I told you that the first type of data is organizational data. It captures information about the client, and that's the whole enterprise at the very top. Underneath the client, we have different company codes. You can think of the company codes as subsidiaries, or they can be, as we said in the case of the university, it may be the different colleges that are there. Now, it's important to realize that the company code, each company code is a legal entity, an independent legal entity, which means it is independently responsible for its own financials and so on. Also, these company codes generate their own financial statements and financial reports. So they may run their own balance sheet, their own income statement, and so on. Underneath the company codes are the plants, and the plants are facilities, and SAP adopt a very flexible definition of a plant, in that the plant can be a warehouse, it can be a distribution center, it can be manufacturing, and so on. Now, the organizational data, as we say, it very rarely changes. You hardly see a company that is constantly adding new company codes and so on. Once you establish the structure of the organization, then it remains, you would expect it will remain stable for 2 or 3 years. So we've already talked about the client. We talked about the company code. Again, remember the company code, each company code is a legally independent entity. It runs its own financial statements. So a client may have underneath it multiple company codes. The company code, however, must only belong to one client. And it makes sense. If you come to think of it, if I look at any subsidiary, which is under a company, there is no way that subsidiary would belong to 2 companies at the same time. You cannot say it belongs to HP and Dell. It's either one or the other. So it makes sense to say that a company code must belong to only one client. There cannot be 2 clients claiming the same company code. Plants, as we said, are facilities. These can perform different things. They can be factory, warehouse, distribution center, and office, or they can be a combination of things. So in one plant, you may have half of it as a production facility, and then the other half is warehouse, because you want to store the items or the material that you produce. So part of the factory produces, the other part house or store the material. So as you can see here, this is the organizational data. We said that the client at the very top, and you will see, for example, when you start using SAP, that we have client 200. That 200 is just referring to Qatar University. Now, different colleges may be using SAP, so each one of the college will have its own company code. And then we have different plants, and these, you can think of the plants as the buildings or the facilities, but just like understand that in SAP, a facility doesn't have to be in just one building, that you can have a plan that spans multiple buildings. The database that we are going to use is called GBI, standing for Global Bike Incorporated. And it is, again, a multinational organization that sells bikes. And they have different types of bikes, touring bikes, and bikes that are used for racing and so on. They have 2 main subsidiaries, one in the US and the other one in Germany. Underneath each one, you see there are different plants, a Dallas plant, a San Diego plant, a Miami plant in the US, and then two others in Germany. Now, when you read the book, you will understand that, for example, Miami only ships to the customer, whereas Dallas produce or assemble components together. So each plant is dedicated a specific job. We talked about master data being persistent data. It is a long-term data. It resides within the database. You would not expect to purge that information at the end of a business cycle. Examples would be customers, vendors, and material. You do not expect these to be purged because you will continue to use them again the next business cycle. So, but one thing you have to note to understand is that for each of these master data, they have multiple views. They have multiple views, meaning categories of information that you collect on each one of them. So a customer, you collect, for example, just general data, and that general data is used all across the organization. So people in purchasing might be interested in the customer general data, but also in financials and in sales and so on. So there is general data that's used all across. There are specific data that only pertain to a particular module within SAP. So when we start talking about the accounts receivables, then definitely finance would be the module or the functional unit that would be looking at this view for the customer. Now, if we are talking about personal preferences, then definitely sales might be the area that will have access to that view. So information about the customer or a vendor or a material are categorized into views. The views are used by different departments in order to perform their business processes. So you will not see a person or a user having access to all views. Yes, when you use the SAP system, you actually have that access, but that's because for learning purposes, they are trying to make you understand all aspects of the system. In real life, that's not the case, of course. You have a profile, and the profile determines what kind of views do you see. So now if we look at the material master, you find that the material is used in procurement. Why? Because you buy it from the suppliers. Procure means to buy. Fulfillment, that's selling. Production, that's manufacturing. And then material planning is actually used before production to determine how much should I produce. Asset management is making sure that the material that you have is used and is kept correctly, and you are not trying to waste it. And project systems, sometimes of course the projects that you involve in use some of the material that you either produce or you sell. And then we have lifecycle data management. All of these different modules, they use certain views of the material, not all views, but some views that pertain to them. So as we said, data are grouped in views. These views are accessible based on the process. So if you are in fulfillment, which is selling, you will see specific views that are different, but a little bit different from purchasing. Again, the material type determine what you get to see. So when we are looking at raw material, you will not see selling because you don't sell your raw material. You use them in order to manufacture. Same thing, if you have finished products, then it is very unlikely that you would be purchasing this material. And again, the organization element, the department, certain departments have access to certain views for the material. Okay, here is some of the views that you will have for the material. See how many they are. There are basic data that every single module can see. It's not protected. There is no restriction on it. But when I come to the financial accounting, then it's FI and CO that the FICO module will get to see. If we are talking about selling, then sales data or sales and distribution will get to see that view. If we're talking about procurement, then the purchasing data will be is the view that you will get to see. So it's important to understand that the type of the material, the process that you are involved in, and the organizational element or the organizational unit determine what view do I get to see. I've already told you that different materials determine the views. So raw material, as we said, we can see purchasing, but we will not see selling because you don't sell your raw material. The opposite is true for semi-finished goods. You will see production and you will see selling, but you will not purchase it. You don't purchase your semi-finished good. This is something that you assemble. So you produce it. So manufacturing will be seeing that kind of a view, and the same thing for sometimes you purchase these assembled components. انتوا عندكم حصة دلوقتي؟ انت تعرفي لو في حصة دلوقتي موجودة في الكلاس ولا لا؟ السلام عليكم. انا خايفة يكون حد كان عايز يخش وانا يعني هم شافوا حد فوقف. Is there a way يعني to check on the internet لو الكلاس لو انا بس بسجل بس مش there is no class in here. I'm just recording. Yeah. How do I know whether there is a class in here or not? لا ما مش شايفة حد بس مش عارفة Is there a place on the internet يعني ان انا اشوف اذا كان في كلاس في اللاب ده ولا لا؟ هو انا سألت الدكتور قال لي تعالي يعني خشي في اللاب وسجلي فمش عارفة. طيب خير. Transaction data, as we said, is transient data. You do not need to keep it at the end, after the end of a business cycle. So, example of a transaction data would be a sales order. You wouldn't expect a sales order that was created in January, for example, to be retrieved. You don't expect the client, for example, to have any concerns. If they had concerns, they would have initiated that concern long time ago. So by December, you would purge all of these sales orders outside of the transactional, outside of the database into a historical database. And we said that we need to keep them for a couple of reasons. One is that for legal purposes, you are not allowed to delete any transactional data. And the second is organizations need to look at historical data and learn from it. And so that they analyze the historical data in order to predict what will happen in the future. Now, the new wave of statistics, or the new trend in statistics, is also to do prescriptive analytics, and that's look and see what would be a suggested course of action that would benefit the organization. So it's not just that I'm predicting what will happen in the future, but the software is also suggesting how you should react to these changes or the trends that will occur in the future. So we said that we have organizational data, we have master data, and we have situational data, and all of these will, or part of them will go into the transaction data. And let me tell you how. When you create an order, a sales order, you have to refer to the client, and you have to refer to the company, you have to refer to a particular customer. And then you have a who, when, where. This part of it, this is the items that they are ordering. They want it to be delivered to a specific place, and so on. So again, part of the organizational data and the master data will be in the transaction data. But deleting the transaction data will not have any effect on the master data, the storage of the master data and the organizational data. Because what you are putting inside of the transaction data is just a reference. So I have a customer number in here. I have a company code. And I have a set of items that I'm selling. When I delete that sales order, or I shouldn't say delete, but like when I purge the sales order, that will not have any effect on the original record in the master data or the organizational data. You're just deleting the reference to it, but not the original record is untouched. Okay, so when you create transactions, you create transactional documents. So when I create a sales order, there is a sales order document, but there are also impact on the financials and the control. And of course the material document. So if I'm selling, I expect inventory to go down, and also the cost of goods sold will be affected. And again, a certain department will be credited for the profit generated from the sale. So you have certain documents that are created. You have an impact on the financials. Definitely, anything that has to do with money will impact financials. And of course, any entry in financials will be reflected one way or another in control, either through a profit or through an expense. So here is an example of a purchase order. You see at the top the header, and then you see the line items in here. So the transactional documents in general will have two parts to them. A header at the top that, as we said, refer to a particular company, refers to a client, will have the address of that client, and then you have like information also about like delivery time, you have the shipping, and so on. The lower part of the order will be what we call the line items. These are the individual items that are ordered, like the knee pad, the elbow pad, and so on. So remember, every transactional document will have two parts to it. Will have at the top the header, and